Hi, everyone. This is Joe March. My guest tonight is a good friend of mine, Waylon from the Black Tower. Links to his YouTube channel are going to be down below in the description. And we're mostly just going to have a conversation because our conversations just always get really interesting.
They
So
do get very interesting.
how you doing tonight, Waylon?
I'm doing it, man. I'm doing it. I've got my coffee in my nanking cup.
Ooh, very nice.
Yes, I know, and you can't get them anymore. Haha.
Hmm.
I
I
like
think
that rare, one of a kind shit. Fits my personality.
I think I've had you on my channel twice since it's been the new channel, and I think I had you on twice on the old channel. It might have been three times.
3 times, yeah, because it was twice on the old one where we discussed masks
Hmm.
in depth on that,
Yep, that's right.
and then one other time since coming back
Yeah.
onto the YouTube scene.
Yep. And so I always have a good time. This day, it's funny because you've basically watched me go through all my different transition points.
I
And one
like it,
thing,
man. It's
yeah,
like watching. It's like watching something being born.
hmm,
Learn, oh my God, I have legs,
yeah,
and starts
exactly.
walking, and then, hey, what do these do? And then starts tinkering with stuff. Oh, kind of like a child. And see,
Yep.
and that's our magical self, though.
Well, you have a series that you put up. It's been a little while now.
Yeah,
That's
I haven't actually done an updated video on
on
the
the Sinister
Sinister.
Series. Yeah.
Hell, I haven't done that in a while. A lot of the reason why is because like in Magic, when you're learning something, you need
Hmm.
to take time. You need to make sure that that you're totally immersed into it.
Absolutely.
Got a grasp of it, stuff like that. Well, like let's say that every 3 to 5 days I put out a video
Hmm.
where I'm like, oh, hey, do this, so forth and so on.
Hmm.
Or maybe I teach something or share something, and they're always like, "Yay, I've watched that," and they totally let it go. And they're
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
and then they wait until the next video to come out, and then they're like, then they're absorbing that in, and then they go about their way.
Hmm.
I'm one of those people that believe that if you're going to say something, if you're going to teach something, share something, say it so that it has the weight and the
Hmm.
effect that it's supposed to have. So that, like, let's say somebody's like, "Oh, well, what was he talking about this?" and they watch it again, or for whatever reason, And see, and that's the thing is that it's supposed to, be absorbed. It's
Right.
supposed to,
Yeah.
come to an understanding, and then not just an understanding of what I'm saying. You're supposed to be able to independently
Hmm.
connected with some part or aspect of yourself and of what you're going through at that point in time and
Hmm.
see if it relates to it. And if it does relate to it, then you have a concept or an idea of where you're at in your process.
Yeah. And that word understand is always complicated too, because it can be loaded depending on what you think it means. Like some people think that just means that they heard you and they took in the words you said. And some people have to have a full experience to truly understand. And it can be anything in between, depending on who you are for how you take that word. So,
Right. Uh,
yep.
in the this past year with these workers that I've been doing, um, there's a phrase often that comes to mind from Oppenheimer when
Hmm.
he was talking about the bomb
Hmm.
and discovering about how atoms collide and so forth and so on. I think in that moment there was a grasp, a concept that all of a sudden dawned on him wasn't just, wow, I figured this out, but there was a point when he realized what somebody could do with it if they
Hmm.
chose to.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel a lot of times with what I express and what I share and how I'm
Hmm.
breaking things down for people is I'm very consciously aware of what they can do with it. And I'm not comparing myself to Oppenheimer by any stretch of the imagination, but I can understand in his phrases when he says, I have become, uh, you know, I have become death, the
Hmm.
destroyer of worlds. I get that because you have to reach that point of deification through a death mask
Yeah.
where you yourself become death omni
Hmm.
and you want to destroy all your gods. You want to destroy everything that stands, that is, and you want to totally do away with it. You have to. You have to, you have to enter into the garden and lay waste to it, so that from its ashes grows new and beautiful growth.
Yeah.
And and in that aspect of destroyer, that apep, that Satian aspect, you definitely
Excuse
you
me.
definitely you definitely reach a point when you're doing that something can occur inside you where you embrace your natural destructive nature, whether it's self-destructive or whether it's destructive in general around you and to others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fine point that when you reach it, there's a decision made. And I don't even think sometimes it's consciously, I think it is subconsciously in alignment with one's nature as to whether or not what you're going to use that force towards. Are you going to use that force towards growth, or are you going to use that force eventually later on for the sake of just pure destruction? And it's because of that and that understanding that I have about it that I approach it the way I do.
Mm-hmm.
I did a video where I was explaining that I had by no means, ran out of ideas or anything else like that. But there are a lot of things that I know and that I understand that there are ways that you have to say it, and there are things that I know from when I work with certain groups and so forth and so on. And some of them can be construed as order secrets, order
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and you really don't want to give away those types of things because oaths are
Right.
given.
Right.
And those oaths have consequences when you break them, whether it's been 10 years, 20 years, it really doesn't matter. The thing
Mm-hmm.
is that in that moment of power and awakening and you gave your word, it still carries that exact same weight even years later. Only difference is that it's had time to mature and strengthen.
I was talking to Milton Knowles about something similar before too, and he was mentioning that you have to even be careful just when you're talking to each other as people who practice, and then you go and you have a channel like I do or like other people like yourself. If you suddenly say, "Oh yeah, I have this idea," you got to make sure you're not giving someone else's ideas away, especially if they're someone who may have gotten that from somewhere and just kind of gave you a secret. You have to be really careful, I feel like, what you share, and to make sure
Like,
it's something you've actually done, you've actually experienced, and you're giving your take. You're not just taking someone else's ideas and spreading them out.
well, you opened that door wide open for me to do what I told you I was going to do.
Oh,
I've
cool.
got to give credit to Envoy of the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
He came up with the best thing I was telling you earlier: bad shit, crackhead spirits. And I gotta say, I give him credit for that. That is, I haven't laughed that hard in a long time because that describes a lot of things that I have dealt with, and thankfully, as I've gotten older, I don't deal with anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it still fits in the general scheme of things when you look at the world around you.
Yeah, I had Envoy of the Dragon on the old channel way back when, and I think that's the only interview, at least that I've seen. Or maybe he did one with you where he was on camera.
Yeah, he was on camera for
So he
mine.
was on camera for yours too, yeah.
Because I don't remove videos from my stuff unless unless like I had to take down one or two because the people who were in them asked me to kindly remove it because they didn't want their face on there because of the type of workings they do or where they live or something of this nature. Not because they're hiding in a broom closet or anything like that, but because it's physically dangerous for their likenesses to be out there.
Well, that's why I always feel kind of honored when someone who doesn't put their likeness up everywhere goes on camera with me and is cool with leaving it that way. And I always think that's pretty neat.
No, it shows a lot of love and a lot of respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how I feel about it too.
He really blew my mind though when he was willing to be viewed on camera. I was like, in my head, I was sitting there going, "Holy shit, right on!"
Yep, exactly.
Check that. Sorcerer on soul.
That's
unmasking.
Right. That's how it feels. It's good stuff.
It's like whenever if I quote something or if an idea came from somebody else, sticking to your original topic there, I always quote the individual, where I got it, and so forth and so on, because, in this day and age, like, for example, you can have 5 authors write a book, and it all be about the same subject.
Yep.
It can seem like every single one of them have, stole the idea from one another. That's not what happened. They're all connected to the same current. They're just through the lens of their mind, describing it in the way that they have translated it, that they've understood it.
But you see that happen with movies a lot, where 2 very similar movies will come out in the exact same year, and those things don't happen by chance, like that. You have to work on a script, you have to get actors together, whatever, and the time it takes to make one movie or another are different. So they didn't start at the same time. They didn't exactly, they didn't copy from each other. There's just too many factors. And so
Look
it just
back
makes you
15
think
years.
like this is the thing that was going to be made, and a couple different people plucked it out of the ether.
Go back 15 years and look for movies like Contagion, Infection, shit like this, where they talk about pandemics,
Mm-hmm.
and watch them name the drugs that they've been talking about with this one. And I was sat there and I was seriously going, 15 years ago, huh? Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting.
It makes you wonder about that shit, like were they connected to the current, just didn't know it?
Yeah. And I mean, that's, I know we're going to talk a little bit about Carl Jung, but he was talking about the collective unconscious, this idea that there's something we all kind of tap into, and
Yep.
we're all kind of, he would sometimes make it sound almost like it was evolution based, or, it was something in your DNA, but still this idea that we're connected in a way that we don't really understand. And so something that comes up because it's just time, you just grab that idea sort of, and you have it, you call it yours. I mean, you did grab it, but that doesn't mean someone else can't grab the same idea. So it gets really fishy.
Serpents of the deep come to mind when talking about that sort of thing. Uh, uh, Draconic serpentine forces, however somebody else would translate it,
Mm-hmm.
or diagnose the energy signature of it or whatever.
Yep.
The thing about it is that there's a force or a power that exists beyond the veil,
Mm-hmm.
within the void, and from it issues forth all things. From
Yeah.
a point of nothing comes all that is. From all that is not, all that is. As
Mm-hmm.
above, so below, all this other shit. But the thing is that those powers, those forces, they're based on, like I was saying, either draconic serpentine of that nature.
Like
And
Tiamat.
so the really, really old magics that were even taught by shamans or
Mm-hmm.
tribal magicians, wise people, so forth and so on. A lot of the reason why serpents were so embodied in that is because it was an ancient symbol of memory. It's
Mm.
where that magic came from. It was in that life force and that venom and in the blood,
Mm-hmm.
and we find it mimicked uh, in the craft.
Right.
And no matter whether it's right hand path magic, left hand path magic, to me, magic is magic is magic. But
Right.
to each their own. Let them break it down how they want to. Uh, but all the elements of magic, they're all based on the exact same thing. One, we're just, some of us are dealing with really old things, which are like
Mm-hmm.
the the parents or the creators of the
Yeah.
stuff that we're using in this day and age. The the maybe our ancestors, like ancestral lineage, like sorcerers, sorceresses,
Mm-hmm.
magicians, shit, shamans, uh, the cores. I mean, put the list there. You got it there. You know what I'm saying? There is a lineage where it goes far back.
Right.
That memory is being taught by the ancestral lineage itself, a spiritual ancestral lineage, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like of a bloodline. Uh, and I think that they affect the collective consciousness that you're
Mm.
talking about. I honestly believe that they affect it.
That's interesting. So I guess we'll dive right into something that I wanted to talk about. So in your Sinister series, you have several parts to talk about your idea of creating a shadow. And this is not the same as Jung's shadow, because we've talked about that before. It's not the same as the Jungian shadow, but it's it's got multiple parts. There's a lot to it. I don't want to try to recap it because I know you definitely are better at it, but keep that in mind for what I want to bring up. So I've been doing research into some of Jung's concepts of the shadow, the anima, and the self. Those are his three kind of primary archetypes that he talks about. And a lot of times I've been working with the teacher, as I'm sure you're probably aware of, and the teacher to me is very similar to what he describes as the anima. Although I would, my thinking is that he is absolutely talking about the same thing, but that I don't know that he quite got it right. So that's kind of my view, is that like I think he's tapping into the same thing, but I think maybe because of just him having to use certain language or make it psychological, there's still an aspect of what it is that he's missing, is a sort of spiritual aspect missing.
I don't
Uh,
think it was missing.
what's
I,
that?
I just don't think it's understood.
Right.
here's what I mean by I don't think it's understood.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start off with the big magic number of 7.
Okay.
Powerful fucking number.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful. So you got the 3 internal, which is the shadow, the anima, and the
And the
self.
self.
That you were
Yep.
talking about, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the 3. Okay. Now those are the 3 internal masters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yep.
the ones that dictate this thing's well-being and existence. Well,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I say well-being, but not like well-being as in, oh, I care about you, I love you, and I want the best for you. Not that kind of well-being.
Nope.
Okay, so we don't want to get all fluffy bunny with the shit. We're keeping it where it's at.
Yep.
But the prolonging of its existence. How
Mm-hmm.
they say that the ego protects itself, it lies
Yes.
to protect itself, it deceives to protect itself because
Mm-hmm.
preservation is the law of man.
Right.
And
Yeah.
these 3 parts all work to do the exact same thing: preservation, preservation, preservation. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're the internal diagram of the anatomy of the forces at work
Mm-hmm.
within those 4 shadows that I was
Right.
describing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I want to dive into because I think your 4 shadows link similarly to this. So let me jump in real quick on some of this, some real quick, probably butchered version of what Jung talks about. But the shadow basically being the parts of yourself, that the parts of your own unconscious that you have pushed there to not see, which kind of can manifest as its own. It's you, but you've decided not to accept it. So sometimes it manifests. Sometimes you project it out onto other people and you'll say, oh, I don't like people who are like this. But it's really an aspect of yourself that you're projecting onto them. And then the anima for men and animus for women, according to what he said back then. I don't know how that works with gender and things now, but
Stop right there.
okay.
You pick up right from there. Okay, so it needs to be understood that as you are a man, the opposite applies to you.
Right.
If you're a woman, the opposite would apply. So
Mm-hmm.
Anima, Animus, it's interchangeably like that. When you're contending with things like the HGA, the daemon, stuff like that, you're going to find it's the exact same thing. But when you're talking about the HGA, the daemon, you're talking about all those 3 things have been brought into one being.
Okay. Yeah.
They
I mean
are collective.
that's kind of the way I'm leaning with it. So that's really cool.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I like it. So the view there that it's always kind of like another level. So the anima animus, depending on which one you have, is sort of the representation of your entire subconscious, unconscious, unknown parts of yourself. And we're more like the gateway to those aspects of yourself.
They are the keeper of the gates of the subconscious. They are the
Right.
guardians of the gate to the. Some will call it the underworld. It's not really
Mm-hmm.
the underworld. It's to the black gates of
Right.
Black Earth in my system, the system that I work and I walk with. Garden of Nod is what it's referred to some people.
Right.
But that's that. That's that. When I was talking about how you've got to destroy. That's what I'm talking about. You go there. But yeah, it's the guardian of that.
Right. And so he'll talk about anima projection as well. So just like you can project the shadow onto people, you can project the anima onto people. So you might
Actually,
see.
you can project them within them.
Yeah.
I probably should not say that. Not on any video, but I will say that. You can project them within. Not upon, but within.
So according to Jung, if you have a poor relationship with your anima, you will reflect these sort of negative aspects onto what you would see as significant others, things like that. But if you have a good relationship with your anima, you're going to find these good aspects in other things that you see and things like that. It kind of affects your positivity, negativity, a lot of the unconscious symbolism that you're drawn to, and that sort of thing.
Well, actually, what happens there, and once again, not interrupting. Not,
oh no,
not
this is exactly what I want to talk about. So
okay, cool. I was really hoping I wasn't being disrespectful.
No, this is perfect.
So the way it works, so like the shadow, for example, is connected to the conscious. That's the everyday shit. Okay?
Yep.
Everything we experience, see, watch, hear, blah, 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 taste, smell, touch, interact with.
Okay.
Any of these things affects it. When you were talking about
for Jung, he kind of sometimes calls the shadow the primitive self also. So it's like the things that you experience that are.
One of my earliest videos, I referred to it as my shit monster.
Yeah.
You can stick to it. Everything.
Right.
And
Yes.
I was like, I have to break out a water hose on this bastard. Because but that was in the process of purification on a soul level.
Right.
But anyway, back to what I was saying though. But the consciousness, which
Right.
is our tradition, and you were talking about, where you know, where you're interacting with somebody and you're like, where you're talking about projection. It's not really that you're projecting, but the consciousness is what does that, not the subconscious, which is
Yes.
where
Yeah.
happiness is.
Correct. It's kind of the
Now,
ego self, the part of you that's kind of in charge of being just the
yeah.
conscious, what you think
So,
you are.
so the Anima Animus will actually affect what comes into your life, what goes out of your life. Okay. So let's say, for example, you have an unhealthy uh, outlook,
Mm-hmm.
feelings, opinions, whatever the fuck, towards women, if you're a
Right.
man. Okay. And like, let's say that somewhere deep down inside you, you despise women.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your other half within you is female. What it's going to do is it's going to attract broken, fucked up women in your life where that
Mm-hmm.
are victims, that are it's a continuation of victimology,
Mm-hmm.
which is why they always tell you, to know yourself, and then you have to like heal yourself and all this other shit. This is what
Yep.
it's talking about. Because
Mm-hmm.
what happens is the Anima Animus pulls to you the things that you're naturally inclined and aligned to.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
like, let's say, for example, 20 years ago, I was a very self destructive individual,
Mm-hmm.
relationship wise. I wanted true love. I wanted this. I wanted that. And I wanted it to last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is that I had this deep seated notion that bitches is fickle. And for some fucking reason, I couldn't figure out why all I kept attracting was fickle bitches. Whether it be males, females, they was all fickle bitches.
You're
So I
manifesting
was
it.
like, well, I know how to fix this. After a
Mm-hmm.
while, I'm like, if I really want something, then that means there's not something wrong with somebody else, and there's something wrong with me, and I need to find out what it is. So I went deep down inside, and I'm having to heal that part of myself. You have to look at the root of a thing to find out what's causing it. Because sometimes, it's like the lion and the mouse. The lion has a splinter stuck in his, between the pad and his claw, and it's fucking hurting so bad. And anything that could help him ain't coming near him because he's too
Mm-hmm.
fucking ill to deal with. But this little
Right.
mouse is like, little fast, little small things. Like, I get that out of there and he'll calm down. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's how you have to approach your anema, your anemas, because that's what they are. They are inflamed with hate. They're inflamed with rage. They're vibrating at the rate that you've instilled upon them because they are you and you are them.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally, whatever that vibrational rate is what you attract to you,
Mm-hmm.
or repel from yourself.
Right.
Because it's like there are some people, I swear, man, they seem to be fucking magnets for trouble. You ever wonder why they're magnets for fucking trouble? Because they're not fucking aware of what's going on inside themselves, and
Yeah.
therefore, it's not that they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And oh, that could have happened to anybody. No, that could only happen to that motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't their fault, like in a conscious sense.
Yeah.
It was their fault in the sense of there was something that was imbalanced within them, and nobody could spot it and try to help them through.
Yep. And so when we look at the shadow and the anima or animus, they are part of you from when you're born, basically, and they grow and change as you grow and change. But they're always there. It's not like you have to develop one for it to show up. But you should develop a relationship to be
That's
able
funny.
to.
When you say relationship, a lot of people think that it's like a spirit. You sit there and you communicate with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works. Your animus is always a harmonizing, balancing force within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a male, I'm masculine, all this other stuff, Got an outie, not an innie. Anywho, I'm sorry, that was sarcasm bigger than hell on my part. Because I really don't see gender, whatever the fuck, I don't really care. But the thing is, I'm going to hell one day.
No, you're just going to get canceled. That's all.
No, I'm driving the bus. I am driving the bus to hell. And there's plenty of space for motherfuckers want to join me. We're going. We're going to have fun. We're having a party. Beer kegs and all. Beer kegs and bitches. But anywho, so the Anima Animus is our alter self, our alternate self, if you will, the harmonizing factor.
Yeah.
Like you've seen a lot of dudes that they're all masculine and butch and all this other shit towards other dudes. You know, it's like, you know, who's the alpha male? Who's the alpha male? Well, I promise you, it's not the loudest one. That's the alpha.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
those are beta motherfuckers. Alphas don't have to question.
Mm-hmm.
They just are, and everybody seems to fall in line and never even consciously know what they're doing. They're just doing it. Well, in a sense, imagine that the Anima Animus is the alpha of that alternate self. And so what it is that you're learning to harmonize both the masculine and the feminine, and not in a dual nature kind of way. I cannot express that enough.
Right.
It's not about a dual nature. It is about masculine, feminine, active, passive, you know, hot, wet, or hot and dry, whatever.
Yep.
Whatever. But anywho, but not in a dualistic, not in your normal dual nature, but just it's the harmonizing factor. And so to build a relationship with it is to, if you're an alpha male, like let's say that you are kind of a butch dude, tone it down some, just a little bit. Yeah, you're a male, you got an Audi, yay! So there's a lot of other motherfuckers, and maybe put that through your head so that you allow that window for your Anima Animus to come through, so that it can balance, so it can harmonize.
Right.
But that's how you build a relationship with it, is learning how to portray both halves of yourself, not just a singular part.
And then that leads to his third archetype that he always talks about, which is the self. But if you really read on it, it more compares to what a lot of people would call the higher self, like a grand form of all of that. And one thing I find interesting about it is when you talk about being able to access these things and being able to interact with them, it actually works best if you go in the order that we talked about. You start with the shadow, then you move on to the Anima Animus, then you move on to the self.
I like that.
So it's a kind of an interesting thing. Now, all of that said, it was a long explanation just to get to my first question for you. In your series where you talk about the shadow, which is definitely a different thing, that's kind of, you're creating that as kind of a separate part of self. I notice you also have multiple parts to that. There's multiple shadows, and that in order to get to the later shadow form, you have to move through these other ones. Is it a kind of similar process, or is this completely apples and oranges? What do you think about
that? They're outside. So these original three that you're talking about, shadow, Anima, Animus, and self, those are the internal elements. Okay.
Right.
You have those three pieces in alignment and one, then you can begin the growth of the shadow.
Got it.
You can't. Well, it's like a man and a woman laying together. That's how seed and egg are united. Okay. So in a sense, you have to understand that that's kind of how the birth of the shadow works at all. Is that if these other three aren't together like that, yeah, there is no crafting or creation of. With the self, I absolutely love the concept that you're talking about there, with it being connected to the higher self, because that makes perfect sense. Now, when you talk about something, a lot of the times I joke and I say, I'm just talking to myself. I'm not really talking to my fucking self. I'm talking to my higher self, sitting there just having a conversation as if I was talking to my fucking self. You know, kind of like if I was sitting across from myself, going, hey, Waylon, what do you think? I don't know. What do you think? Cake, bitches. Exactly, cake. You know, or whatever. But the thing is though, so the self is higher self. The self is higher self. When you're at that point, the higher self is the one you want to build the actual communicative bridge with. That's the one you want to communicate with. Because there is nothing that does not know. I'm just going to tell you, I don't give a shit if it's from the void. I don't care if it's a past life. I don't care if it's you're trying to discover your true name. I don't care if you're trying to tag somebody energetic. I don't give a damn what you're trying to do. The one that can guide you to this perfection is the self. And the self is not the self as you would think. It's your perfected self. It's think of you without any of your thoughts. And it sits there and it steadily guides and directs. The reason why plants and flowers have their leaves go out and up is because it's almost as if they're reaching for the sunlight. Well, imagine your shadow and your Animus are doing the exact same thing towards your higher self.
Right.
They are seeking healing. They are seeking, validation. They're seeking what sustains them, what allows them to grow, what allows them to exist and to be. That's why the shadow is so vindictive sometimes. Talk about the shadow that you're describing, not
Yep.
the external. Okay, that's
Right.
why the shadow self is so sometimes vindictive and
Mm-hmm.
just really whatever. And that's also why the anima sometimes can be imbalanced.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's because of lack of communication and lack of attunement with the self.
Right.
Uh, this doesn't make it greater and like, oh well, as long as I have conversation and connection with my higher self, the rest doesn't matter. No, that's not how that works.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how you begin to heal. That's how you begin to fix the shit inside you. You want to know how to balance out your anima animus? Connect with the self. Connect with the higher self. You want to learn how to heal the ego, how to cleanse the ego instead of destroy it. Talk to the self because the higher self's the one that has all that.
Mm-hmm.
That'll guide you through that process. Now then, once you've done all that and you've got all those three pieces in one place and they are in alignment, they are in perfect alignment, then you can begin the true work. Now, if all that wasn't enough to keep the hands tied together for a while,
Yep.
here begins the real work, man's work. And that's where you go into the crafting of the shadow and so forth and so on,
Okay.
which I have to give. I honestly, I sincerely, with all my heart, mind, body, and soul, I reached out over 2 years ago to a man by the name of Shaki Dewan of
Mm-hmm.
Suffolk Sorcery,
Mm-hmm.
and was probably the first and only person and the most instrumental in helping me understand what was happening to myself. Now, in his tradition, it's a little different,
Mm-hmm.
so forth and so on. And I have to give him credit because he's the one that helped me come to terms and understand what was happening with myself and what was going on, so that
Mm-hmm.
I could get to this point that I'm at now. Uh, that being said and done, I took the advice he gave me and some of the meditations and so forth and so on, and I ran.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking ran with it. I didn't even fucking look back and even question it. Didn't even think about it. In connection with my daemon, and just here we go with this information, and slowly but surely the unfolding of these shadows started coming to me in a way that I could understand them, that I could work with them, which is absolutely not like the Sufi traditional way. It's really not. Uh, I adore Shaki. I have utmost respect for that man. He's the real deal. He really is when it comes to this stuff. He knows more about it than I do,
Mm-hmm.
like 10 times more than I do. But if you're talking about somebody who knows how to break it down in a language that can be instrumental and used practically,
Mm-hmm.
I took his advice and went working with my stuff, put my shit together to where I could work it, to where I do what I do. And it took over a year before I put out the Sinister Series because
Yeah.
I don't use people as guinea pigs, and I don't just sit there and dream up a thing and then,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm gonna write this down and or pass it off as truth. No, 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 no. It must
Right.
be tested and verified. And that takes personal practice. And one thing that I discovered is that the crafting of this shadow, of the very first shadow, requires a blasphemous act. You must
Mm-hmm.
break yourself free of some divine order. You have to break yourself free of it, and that's considered a blasphemous
Mm.
act.
Right.
What evil in men's heart lies when first they thought themselves a god. So begins the first book that I'm writing on. Those are the words
Interesting.
given to me by my daemon, and dude, they stand fucking true as shit.
Yeah.
From the moment you realize or think, if you just a notion of an idea that you're a god, dude, that breaks loose so many chains, so many
Mm-hmm.
shackles. It's not even funny. But that's considered a blasphemous act. The thought
Right.
alone is a blasphemous act. But when you do this, the very first shadow is born. Now it's not fully formed and functional and all this other shit. No, man, it is what it is. But that's how the shadow. That's how the shadow is born. And by
And
shadow, I
again,
use.
this is not the same shadow as Jung's shadow. This is
Oh, it's
after
not.
all that other work is done.
Yeah, this falls in line with the Sinister series that I was going
Mm-hmm.
over.
So it's conceptually an external shadow as opposed to internal
Yeah.
one.
And I can thank Michael W. Ford for a cute little word called the Travashi because I had no word to describe what I was talking about, which was the soul within us as a shadow.
Right.
Because
Got
think
it.
about it, the soul is a malleable thing. It can be cracked in any shape, form. And there's no such thing as a spare part because I've seen a lot of people like, oh, I traded my soul for this, or I did this, or I did that. I'm like, mine, mine. And
Right.
I'm gonna craft this thing into a badass. But how do you do that? You have to have knowledge of shadow and the
Right.
soul as shadow. And when Michael W. Ford, putting out the word for Bashi and what it represents, I'm sitting there going, holy shit, that's powerful. But here's how you would do that. Here's how you would work with the Fravashi is through the crafting of the soul as shadow into its myriad of forms. And it takes three forms, and the fourth is literally created from the three that are born and created.
Yeah, and that's why I thought to ask this question in the first place, because I noticed that it had that same kind of pattern of having sort of three parts that come together.
They do, and
And
that
and
together.
in my view, and I may have Jung wrong, but in my view, the shadow, the anima, and the self kind of come together to be the fullness of who you really are.
Okay, and
Not the conscious you, not the
no,
ego you,
no, no.
but the
Let's look
and
at
so
it.
I wondered if this process, since you do call it the shadow, is it kind of like a mirroring of your own initial self-actualization, and then you're
It is
bringing
a bit of
this.
a, it is a bit of a mirror. I like to equate an occult symbol, the tree of
Mm-hmm.
life. When you're talking about what you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
with Jung's three parts there, I
Yep.
like to equate them to the right hand pillar, the left hand pillar, and the middle pillar.
Yeah. Okay.
Tree of life. Now they create in the Kabbalistic system what is known as the body of Adam Kadmon. Now
Yeah.
the body of
Right.
Adam Kadmon is literally a formula for assuming your godhead,
Mm-hmm.
using the body of light or the lux et illuminatus,
Mm-hmm.
the illuminated light.
Right.
Uh, so it's just a formula. But the thing is that those three parts literally represent that. But see,
Mm-hmm.
that is the basis, that is the foundation, that is the center point
That's
for
just you
something
finding
that
you at
gives
that point.
you what
That's just so you can find you.
exactly because it's
Yeah.
all about your point of perception. You have
Mm-hmm.
to know where you are on your path, and when you're looking at like say a deity, a spirit, or a concept, you need to
Mm-hmm.
know where are you standing. What is your point of reference?
Yeah.
Because that's going to affect what you're able to do with it and how you're able to look at it because your
Mm-hmm.
perception is everything.
Yeah. And so, what do you look at for the shadow from the Sinister series? Is that sort of like the reverse tree, or am I going in a different direction here?
No, I look at it as uh, illuminations. The
Mm-hmm.
brightest of lights cast the deepest of shadows.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
And so what you're doing is by connecting those three and making them, you're becoming, dude, you're becoming the brightest fucking candle there is. Like you're becoming God on the throne in a Gnostic term, a Gnostic sense. You're becoming the Almighty.
So you're sort of building this external shadow to strengthen the internal self is kind of the idea.
No, you're using the internal self to craft the
Ah, okay.
shadow so that your consciousness can be transited from this physical body into it upon the passing.
Mm,
This is why I go on and on about working your waking and your dreaming self have to be one.
mm-hmm.
Basically, like you're shifting from one consciousness to another consciousness, from one mindset to another.
Okay, I get
Awake
it.
and sleep must be the same thing as I'm waking up, drinking my coffee, I'm sitting here talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
It must be that as long as it becomes seamless, the transition of taking your consciousness and projecting it forward into your new form
Mm-hmm.
upon the death of this physical flesh should be no different than falling asleep. It should happen seamlessly like that.
Got
But it
it.
takes a life, it does take you doing the work in this life to achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
And the lifeblood, a lot of text. I mean, a lot of text. Now I'm not talking about this Necronomicon or religious text or just about any kind of text. They're always talking about a cost or a sacrifice. They're talking
Mm-hmm.
about something that seals. your life's blood seals the greatest spell ever cast. And if you, someone like myself, who spent their, you know, most of their entire adult life, working on achieving this point of seamlessness to where,
Mm-hmm.
crafting a form, perfecting the inner self so that it can project into that form, so that it can exist beyond death, so that it is, so that no one's having to do any great rites, like they did in Egypt when they were immortalizing the pharaohs.
Right.
Because face it, we don't live in a day and age where we belong to some a nation's going to gather and deify us. That's not going to fucking happen. We have to deify ourselves.
Right.
And so the whole process is about self, not necessarily self deification, but it's about doing the work of a god.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Now, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to bring anything more to that than what you just put. So I'm going to go on to kind of another question I had for you, which is more of an open question. So you have a lot of interesting experiences, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, where you interact with different spirits and things like that. You go to different places. I'm interested in your take on, well, before we even go the whole way into that, relating to what we were just talking about, is that something you think also is a step that takes place after going through the kind of Jungian steps? You kind of get to know yourself and then you start to have these experiences, or is it part of the process?
Okay, you are so going to have to break that down in layman's terms. I did not understand that question.
All right, sorry. So it's because I switched gears halfway through. So we were talking about the shadow, the anima, the animus, the self, and also magic. Because some people will look at them as psychology and magic. I kind of see it as all kind of the same thing. But your interactions with spirits and things, did that have to wait, just like how the creation of the shadow did, until after finding the self, or is that something that helped you on the initial growth toward finding the self?
Oh, well, see, that's a strange question, and
Mm.
here's why I'm gonna say it's a strange question because it's going to have a stranger answer.
Nice.
So forever and a day, I worked with deities as just straight up fucking deities.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't question whether they were real or not. I didn't give a fuck. I knew they answered my call. They came quickly, and damn, something happened.
Right.
So I was a believer. So from a standpoint of a priest
Mm-hmm.
who works with a deity or deities, of course, I call upon them. Stand guard, protect me, surround me,
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah, yakety schmackety. But as I went to working with them, the more and more I kept watching and listening to them when
Mm-hmm.
they were just doing their thing, and I was noticing that they would do things that were out of character of myself, and I was sitting there like, why
Hmm.
do you why do you do that, or what's the this knowledge that you're sharing with me? I'm not quite understanding what part of me am I do I need to change or alter so that I can actually comprehend what you're talking about,
Right.
and it took years. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really not. It took almost a decade, I guess, for me to kind of be able to understand that spirits are spirits,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, there's a part of them that's man-made.
Right.
The part of them that's man-made, we discussed in your on your old channel, is about the
Mm-hmm.
mask,
Yep.
because they wear the faces that we gave them. This does not make them our creation.
Mm.
That just says that we were responsible for how they evolved, how they became.
Mm.
They themselves on their own were perfect, without blemish, without flaw. Mankind is probably the most flawed, fucked up creature on earth, but we can build a mask and slap it on a spirit and say, you're going to answer this call because, I named you.
Right.
So forth and so on. And after a while of working with them, I'd be like, well, I'll tell you what, skip past everything a book says. Skip past everything I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
Show me your face. Show me. Allow me. I'm going to open my heart to you.
Yeah.
Show me your beauty. And after a while, they began, actually honestly showing themselves to me,
Hmm.
showing that some of them were spirits of splendor and beauty, just blew my fucking mind. Like, makes you think angelic and holy.
Right.
And these are supposed to be demons.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of them, they couldn't hold a solid form to save their life. And I was
Right.
always confused at that because I was like, what's up with that? Why won't you show me your true form? You know, I had this one spirit just like I thought he was having a connection fit. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what the fuck, man? Because I mean, he was just shifting. I was, okay, I asked you to show me your
Mm.
true face, your true form, and I mean, just out of nowhere, it's just like this is my true form. I have no other form to show you. I have many faces. Which one do you want to see?
Right.
And that's when it dawned on me. I felt like such a fucking idiot, but it dawned on me. Holy crap! You know, some
Mm-hmm.
of these spirits they have such a dichotomy of difference in them and between them that it's okay for us to write down their names and their abilities and their influences and all this, that, and the other. But we're forgetting one thing. Like humans, they are individual and they are different.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily in a human nature kind of way, like, oh, you hurt my feelings, oh, you pissed me off, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah. Because true spirits, they're just, dude, they're really not like that. Their reactions can appear and come across as human, but at the very base nature of them, they're not, because
Mm-hmm.
they're not human. They're, you know, they're other.
Right.
That's why in ritual you sit there and you say, uh, let us take off the mask. Let us
Mm-hmm.
remove the human and become other. And that's a cry to be removed from this so that you can experience and see things for how they truly are.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I can think of another thing I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Um, this is so we both know Milton Knowles.
Yeah. Go
Sometimes
for
when
it.
I talk to Milton, and just like with you and me, I talk to him in not recorded fashion also. So people might be like, "Where did he say this to Milton?" It's like, don't worry, this is off. But we talk about one of the things he refers to them as spirits who wear the faces of the dead.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted to get your perspective on what you think about that. Is that a separate kind of spirit from the ones you're talking about, or is that more like those spirits just taking on the form that you're giving them?
No, now I honestly, now I talk with Milton a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
When I get the opportunity and chance to, and we've talked about a lot of weird stuff, a lot of goofball shit sometimes too. Uh, but the thing is that as far as exactly what Milton's talking about, probably not too far off from where I'm about to take it.
Okay.
Probably not too far off. So there are they all fall under the sign of Al Ghul.
Mm-hmm.
Al Ghul. Uh, these spirits haunt graves. They haunt graves. Uh, in a graveyard, you're going to find three different types of spirits. You're going to find the guardians of the dead, the ones who protect the dead. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
find the spirits of the dead, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
going to find the haunters of the graves. Now, the haunters of the graves are a whole different animal. They sometimes they're very dangerous. I mean, extremely dangerous. They are the spirit that possesses. You have to be very careful because they can
Mm-hmm.
possess the dead and they can possess the living. Now, I do not know how to go into how dangerous these things are. As a necromancer, I will tell you straight up, you have to be at your peak. You
Hmm.
have to, when you're working with the dead, when you're calling upon them, and you have to be able to spot something that's different, doesn't quite fit, doesn't feel right, doesn't sense right. You know, just
Right.
you've got to know what you're doing before you just go, oh, I'm going to go talk to the dead and call them up because I want to talk to my great grandma.
Mm-hmm.
I got possessed one time by one of these bastards calling up my dead adopted mother. No fucking thank you. And now I was young, didn't even know what the hell I was doing then. You
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, they are known as the possessing spirit, though. Now, what they'll do is that they'll take on the likenesses, the appearance. Oh, they'll even have to feel like
Mm.
you, like not you yourself, but imagine out there in the audience. Think of people that you've loved, that you've known in real life, that are right there beside you, that you feel, that you know their energy. They walk in a room, you know who they are. You ain't got
Mm-hmm.
to look at them. Imagine having that kind of connection with somebody that's passed on. Now, let's say you're sitting there and like let's say that you're not bored and it's not a Halloween night, you know, full moon, and you're like, ooh, I'm gonna do something edgy cool. Let's just say that you're legit. you're wanting to call up the spirit of a loved one. You want to honor them when the veils are thinnest. And so you call them up. You're like, offer them bread, offer them water, alcohol, tobacco, whatever your tradition is and calls for. And you call them, and you feel them, and you sense them, and they are who they are. But there's this one type of spirit that likes to wear their likeness and their field. Imagine an imposter. Lately in the news, there was this dude that came out as he was somebody's long lost kid, and he's got 2 years in jail for doing this shit. Well, imagine if that was a spirit trying to pass off to somebody that you lost that you love. That's these things, but now they're not there for good. They are not there for anything good, and by good I don't mean good evil. I'm talking about there's nothing healthy about why they're there. They either to feed off your energy, either to take your life force, to possess you, to influence, to affect all this stuff. They are the most dangerous. And they are dangerous for a lot of reasons, because the longer they exist on this side of the veil, the stronger and more dangerous they become. And we're not talking about poltergeist, whatever that initial crap is for psychic. Psychic created beings and shit. We're talking about something altogether different. The only thing I can think of is the Agalu. The Agalu come the closest, because they are the as far as like celestial, the Agalu are damn near older than the ancient ones. And the ancient ones, they consider them rabid dogs. They those things are kept way at bay.
Right.
In ancient Egypt, in the sands of Arabia, shit like that, and they'd have these wild dogs haunting really weird places, whether they were graves or whether it's just out, and you're like, why are they there? Could have been a 1,000-year-old grave. These types of spirits will possess animals, living animals, just so that they can do what they do. And then they'll run across the living, and they'll kill the living through wild animals.
Interesting.
So yeah, they're very dangerous. Like we're not talking about your normal run-of-the-mill dangers. We're not talking about, oh, I got to psychically protect myself and I got to show them the cross and all this. No. There are things that just if you don't know what you're doing, you should. You never know. But aside from the fear and the shit that can happen, they just want to. There are a few that are not necessarily malevolent. They could be considered malevolent because they are lying. They're not really your loved one. Right. Some of them just want to remember what it's like. They want to experience the living condition, to experience this life. But a good deal of them just want to take it from you. There's nothing but violence in them. That's all they are.
Interesting.
Imagine in the underworld. Imagine if there were a bunch of ghosts just wandering around. Slowly, their mind leaving them, kind of like a dementia person or someone with Alzheimer's. Okay. Imagine their minds going away. Their memory is fading, and it's just being drawn into the earth and into the waters of the underworld, where it remains. And so that it's just a shell or a husk of the person until they're ready to ascend and come out of the underworld as to be reborn and stuff in a cycle of reincarnation of sorts, or it's a cycle of existence is what it is.
Right.
So it's just a process. So when you find them in the underworld, that doesn't mean that that's where they're going to stay forever. They're just going to stay there until they've been washed and cleansed of everything, and then they'll move on. But imagine that there are intelligent animals. Intelligent, fucking predatorial spirit type that are like animals that literally will circle around them, picking up pieces. Sometimes you can always tell them by their smell. You can always, like, if they're not inhabiting a spirit, they have a smell that is nasty, downright rank. Like rotting diseased meat, like just. It's fucking awful, dude. I've dealt with them a handful of times in real life, and I'm gonna tell you right now, there's dude, there's some things you can exercise and remove from you, and then there's some things that there's no protection against. All you can do is kind of like lead them the other way, you know, kind of guide them the way you want them to go, so that they go away, because there is no effective vanishing exorcism. I mean, you can set wards and walls and all this other crap, but if they're intent on you, you got to keep them strong all the time. So the idea is to lead them away somehow, some way. You know, I'm sure that there are others out there that are way more talented in how to deal with them out there, and I applaud those motherfuckers, because I'm gonna tell you, those are some really dangerous things. I know that last question's come across more like warnings, but to be honest with you, that's all they are. They're not like spirits you could sit down and attain gnosis or not. There's nothing to be learned from them.
Right.
They are rabid. Well, some of them are rabid, like, you know, just kind of like they just are what they are. And then some of them, like I said, they're less malevolent. It really depends on your vibrational rate. The difference is, though, is it doesn't matter how good of a person you are or how bad of a person you are. Your vibrational rate is not what attracts them. You won't attract a particular less malevolent, more malevolent based on your own inner vibration, your own inner state of being. That has dick shit to do with whichever one's come across you. It depends on the dead in the area. Like if you find the burial places of, say, murderers, serial killers, shit like this. Oh man, if you ever find one of those around in a place like that, you can bet your ass that they're nasty, because they've been eating the psychic sludge and crap off that individual. And it's what drives them mad. It's what makes them like that. It's not because they were inherently in themselves. That's why ghouls are, some of them can be worked with. I have a family of ghouls that I work with known as the Yawgmoth as a collective, Yawgmoth individually. You can work with those. Those are intelligent kinds, and they can teach you about their lesser kin, the ones I'm talking about that haunt graves like that, that like to wear the likenesses of loved ones. But even they will tell you, you know, there's only so much you can do with that. You just have to, the best way I know how to put it, think if you have a barn with cattle chutes, and you got some rowdy, rambunctious male bulls, and you don't go in there and try to manhandle them. You know what you do? you guide them down chutes and run them through so that you can control their path. And that's what you have to do with these. That's all you can do with them.
Get them attracted somewhere else.
Yeah, because what it is that they are the way they are because of what they've been eating. They, you know that saying, "You are what you eat." Ooh, they're the embodiment of that, and that's how they're able to take on the likeness of loved ones, is because they've ate off that body.
Well, before we finish recording, is there anything that you wanted to bring up? Anything you're working on that you want to promote or anything like that?
You know, love to talk about my book or books that I'm trying to work on, but I'll be honest with you, it has taken me so long to get all this stuff down, and there's more writing than there is typing right now. There just is. And
I understand the whole book creation process.
My goodness, man, I've been working on this like steady for a year, ever since I recovered as fairly well as I could from hip surgery. I've been working pretty hard at this, but you know, there are times when I'm just like loaded down day after day after day after day with mundane shit that I don't even have time or energy to sit down and even work on it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But one day we'll get the book.
Oh right? Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that.
Nice.
I know I've got about 8-9 people waiting on me to put this motherfucker out, because I keep using pieces and parts of it, because that's the best I can fucking do, is just share little bits and pieces with them and be like, here, this just satisfy your mind with this, and just let me finish doing what I'm doing.
I know a lot of my viewers are already subscribed to the Black Tower, but for those who aren't, if you want more content like this, check them out. I'll have a link in the description.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on here, brother. I always love it.
Anytime. Always fun.
Oh yeah.
Take care.